Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's former chief strategist, remember him? Well, he is now urging conservatives to prepare for controlling the United States government. Here is Bannon on one of his most recent podcasts. Watch.
We're winning big in 2022. We're going to win big in 2024. We need to get ready now, right? We control this country. We got to start acting like it. And one way we're going to act like it, we're not going to have 4,000 ready to go. We're going to have 20,000 ready to go. And we're going to pick the 4,000 best and the most ready in every single department.
Now, it sounds like it's a mere staffing plan for government bureaucrats, right? But it's actually a far more intense plan that Bannon is talking about. And here's why, quote, Bannon referred to 4,000 shock troops in an interview with NBC News on Saturday after the network reported that he had met earlier in the week with party faithful to prepare to reconfigure government once a Republican is in the White House. If you're gonna take over the administrative state and deconstruct it, then you have to have shock troops prepared to take it over immediately. Bannon told NBC, I gave him fire and brimstone, according to the Huffington Post. Now, shock troops is a military term. It's often associated by historians with Nazi brown shirts during World War II. And when Bannon is there encouraging conservatives to take over the federal government with shock troops, he's also been talking not just about the federal government, but also local governments. And so across the United States, you have tons of MAGA faithful who are now essentially infiltrating school boards, running for local office, which is the right, of course, but it is making local politics even more extreme and more divisive. Shock troops, Cenk.
Yeah, so the context is so important here. So, he has a show called War Room. That's not a big deal. We used to have a show on current TV called War Room. So that's standard fare. The Situation Room, it's no problem, okay? When you talk about, hey, when you come into government, make sure you're prepared with your set of bureaucrats to replace the old bureaucrats because you don't want to lose any time. No problem. If a progressive was going into office, I would tell them to be prepared in a similar way because right now it's filled by establishment folks. Now, so where are the issues? The issues are significant. Number one, when you start using the word shock troops, especially within the context of January 6th, and when you start talking about reconfiguring the government, and you talk about that in the context of, well, we didn't like that Joe Biden won the election, so on January 6th, we wanted Mike Pence, the vice president, just simply to declare Trump the president. Well, that's reconfiguring government in a completely different way. That's reconfiguring the democracy out of the government. When you make an allusion to shock troops, you're being more clear saying, no, we're not looking to more efficiently run the government and in a way that it comports with our ideology because we won the election in that circumstance. You're saying, no, we're looking to basically deconstruct, and he says it, deconstruct the government. And he says it also in that speech about how there's more of us than there are these soy boys. And what he's referring to there is we're stronger, we can muscle them. Now that's not true, but that's the reference to soy boys. The other side is weak. They will not oppose us if we bring in our shock troops and do whatever we gotta do to reconfigure this government to one where we have permanent power. And the way you do that is by getting rid of democracy. So if he just stuck with the old name of his show, etc., it would be one thing. But when he starts talking about these shock troops after we saw January 6th, after we know that they hated when they lost and they tried to rip down democracy, understand if they quote unquote get elected another time, this is Steve Bannon saying, don't expect the same government after we're done, because we're not gonna be done. We're gonna basically deconstruct what America used to be, and we're going to go in an authoritarian direction.
And keep in mind, I mean, Steve Bannon, he's not, say, some expert on government bureaucracies. He's not with the Office of Management and Budget, or he's never been. He is a communications specialist. He is a media specialist, according to his own description. This is a term I think Cenk deliberately used to not only inspire the fringe, but also to prepare them for that message that Donald Trump said on January 6th, you have to show strength. And at a time when America is already so divided, and the extreme, particularly on the right, already has these sort of violent illusions and real violence, as we've been talking about, for Steve Bannon to essentially pour gasoline on the flames and say, oh yeah, shock troops, that's an appropriate term. No, it's not about staffing the government. This is about actually using violence, using raw power if necessary, to force your will, not only on the government at the federal level, but also at the local level, at the state level. And oh, by the way, there are a lot of Trumpists who are also now looking to try to run for secretaries of state so that they can run the elections in whatever sort of violent way they want to deny people the right to vote and to make sure that votes are only counted in a certain way.
Yeah, that leads to more context. So Stephanie Grisham used to be the First Lady's chief of staff, and she was also White House spokesperson for a brief period of time. So she worked with Trump for 6 years. Now she's got a book out. We're gonna talk more about it later in the show. But she had an interesting explanation about Trump's interactions with Putin, because it seemed like Putin was trying to play with his mind. And I said her revelations actually, in an interesting way, to me, show that Trump might not be controlled by Putin. Because if you already had compromat on Trump and you already controlled him completely, you wouldn't need to play these games that Grisham explained about bringing an attractive translator and coughing on him and all these stuff. And so I wondered, and you heard me if you watched that episode of TYT, wonder, well then, why does Trump bow his head to Putin so much? It's bizarre, right? And Grisham had an explanation on ABC recently where she said he just loves strong men and he thinks that's the right way to go. He would constantly be talking about how strong Putin was, how strong Erdogan was in Turkey, how strong she is in China. He once asked her, while Erdogan's in the room, who do you think's stronger, Erdogan or she? Oh, they're so strong. You remember when he talked about North Korea? It was great because whenever the leader says something, everybody has to stand up and applaud. And so he just does not believe in democracy. He believes in strong men and dictatorship and authoritarian government. And so in that context, when Steve Bannon goes, oh, we have to get ready for shock troops and completely deconstruct our government and basically disfigure our government, it's not that subtle in terms of what he's alluding to. And then, I'm glad that David brought up the school boards and all the things that are happening there. Now, running for school board, of course, Republicans can run for school board. I don't care how crazy they are or what opinions they have. It's a democracy. Of course you run, right? That's the right way to do it, a healthy political way to do it. That's how we do it in America. But when they go and they threaten violence, and now Merrick Garland at the Justice Department is drawing a line on that. We'll have that later in the program. But when they threaten violence, you have to draw the line as the government, because if you don't, then you lead to anarchy, chaos, rule of law dissipates, and that is the thing that the right-wing authoritarian fans want. They want a breakdown of law and order so that the vigilantes that they have can threaten violence all across the country and inside the government if they ever capture it again at the federal level, and then rule in the way that they want to, which is not our system of government, but a new system of government with shock troops and a government we won't recognize. And so this constant threat of violence, whether it's January 6th, you see it almost every day in the news. People going down with zip ties to try to arrest a female principal in their mind in a citizen's arrest for doing something simple like taking a kid who has COVID out of the school, etc. No, guys, they're afraid that the next election might be their very last chance of ever winning in a democracy again. And so if they win, they're gonna look to end it. If you thought you were ascendant and that you had the majority in this country, well then you wouldn't have to be talking against democracy. You wouldn't have to be talking about shock troops. You wouldn't have to be talking about any of this. You only do that if you think you've lost and you've lost for good. So you're gonna trash our former government for a new one. And that is the scary proposition that the right wing has now. And every time they cross a new line, David, Then they go, what? It's no big deal. It's no big deal. You guys are over-interpreting. Yeah. I mean, so soon they'll be talking about brown shirts and go, oh, no, we just meant shirts that are brown. You guys are, misinterpreting what we're saying.
Oh, and Cenk, it ties right in with, I'm so glad that you raised Stephanie Grisham, because the other part about her ABC interview that stuck out to me is when she talked about that if Trump wins a second term for Donald Trump, his governance would be all about revenge. He would be not constrained in the least because he's not running for re-election. He would implement all kinds of policies against Republicans that crossed him, certainly against Democrats and progressives. There would be nothing holding him back. And so when you have that sort of crazy future to look at if Trump actually runs and does win, and you combine that with the violent rhetoric that we're seeing from Steve Bannon and others, and this idea of people infiltrating school boards and local elections and how ballots are counted, it gets to be really frightening because there's no control. There's no control over these people. And I'm so glad, Cenk, that you also mentioned school boards. Here in Connecticut, where I live, there was an effort, all of us, about every month now, we get a mailing. And it basically decries critical race theory, which is not being taught in the local schools. And when people look at, well, where is this stuff coming from? It is coming from a PO box in Florida, an organization that was started basically to get people riled up to try to divide this town. And that's happening everywhere because there is this idea from the likes of Steve Bannon and Donald Trump. It's not enough just to tear apart the federal government. You also have to tear apart local government as well.
Look, I hope this is one of those things that I don't come back on and tell you guys. We warned you. We've done that now dozens of times over 20 years of the Young Turks, and unfortunately, we've been proven right almost every time, from Republican to Democratic administrations. And I warned that Obama was going to be way too much in favor of corporations as soon as he got into office because he was taking those actions. And I remember the Democrats yelling at me, how dare you, the beloved knighted Obama, there's no way he's gonna do that. And by the end, people had recognized, yes, he largely did what corporations wanted, and there was not very much a real reform of the government at all. I just give you that as a small example, but I give you dozens of examples. But this one is a warning we cannot recover from. If they seize control of the federal government again, I honestly think we're done. Bannon gets it. They're not. The last election is the last one for them. The demographic change is too much. Trump and the Republicans are too unpopular. Their only hope is an electoral college victory on one last election. After that, I mean, look, they've lost 7 out of the 8 last popular votes at the presidential level to begin with, and now it looks like they're down to 40% of the population and dropping. So there is, with Trump, if you don't see by now that there are no bounds, he does, like, stop projecting your decency and your love of this country onto Trump. He has neither. He would end this country and our form of government in a second if he thought it was to his advantage. And what Bannon's telling you now is, yes, it's to our advantage. That is why we're getting our troops ready to come and destroy the government that we all know. Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.